Hello everybody, my name is Sally-Ann Spence and welcome to day 5 of our paleontological dig at Court Farm in the Cotswolds. Really exciting, loads of people taking part in the dig, and we've also got visitors coming in with incredible knowledge, and one of those is Jakob Vinther. Hello Jakob.
Hi there.
Now can you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm an associate professor at the University of Bristol and I'm a paleontologist. And one of my specialities is the study of exceptional fossil preservation. And what the people here are finding are amazing and extraordinary fossils that we don't typically get. And one of the particular common fossils that they find are complete fish. And we have some examples of those right here.
This is amazing. So we've got Sally Hollingworth is busy working on camera for us. Thank you, Sally. Look at this, absolutely stunning.
So that's an articulated fish. We have the head there, and then we see the tail all the way down. And just finding a skeleton like that in complete is extremely rare. But what you should notice is that this dark blob right there, that's the eye. And the eye is preserved as organic material, whereas the rest of the skeleton is obviously mineral. It's apatite bone. That's exceptional. What's preserved there is the melanin pigment. So melanin pigment is the pigment that gives color to our skin and hair. And we also have melanin inside our eye. And under the right conditions, melanin can fossilize. And that's what we have right here. And I can say with some certainty that if we put this specimen under a so-called scanning electron microscope, which now enable us to zoom in much higher than we can with a normal sort of light microscope, then we would see lots of little tiny sausages and meatballs, which are melanosomes, which is the pigment that that the melanin is held within. And we have done studies from other fossils elsewhere, and we can see that there's beautiful layers of these like meatballs and sausages, which is a very unique architecture that we only find inside vertebrate eyes. So any kind of animal that has got a spine down along the back, inside the eyes you have melanin with sort of layers of meatballs and sausages, which will be preserved inside this little beautiful fish, which is, how old is it? About 160 million years? 170?
180.
180. So 180 million year old melanin, the pigment that gives color to your beautiful hair right there.
That's amazing, isn't it? And that's preserved all that time, and that can be preserved just in that.
Yeah, like the melanin might be slightly altered. The backbone of the melanin, this organic molecular backbone, will still be there, but that might be like small bits of this molecule that has been lost. But still we can actually identify this molecular backbone of melanin preserved in fossils like these.
And will we be able to therefore think of a colour or anything, or know of a colour or anything like that?
We would be able to do that if the melanin was preserved across the rest of the animal, and there may actually potentially be some, because it does look a little bit darker along the back here. And like many fish, they typically are dark on the back and lighter on the belly. That's called counter shading. And so that's very commonly preserved in fish. Sometimes you find stripes and other things like that preserved, but that could well be a bit of counter shading gradient. So we could therefore reconstruct this fish as having a darker back and a lighter belly. But we cannot really say anything about the color of the eye, because that melanin is situated all the way on the back of the eye. So it's not the color of the iris, which you might suspect being preserved. Of course, like that could be preserved if you got brown eyes, but that's rarely ever. I don't think I've ever seen that preserved in a fossil.
Well, there's another tiny fish head here. I mean, what do you think about the preservation of that? I mean, it's...
Yeah, this one is impressive because it's got a bit of three-dimensionality, so we can actually see a bit of the sort of globular shape of the eye, and so that means that this fish, after it got buried, very soon after, minerals started precipitating around the carcass in the sediment, in the mud, and therefore prevented it from getting completely squished flat and ending up looking something like a roadkill. So therefore, like I bet, like if we looked at this, then the melanosomes, as we call them, these meatballs and sausages, might be preserving this architecture of how they're arranged inside the eye much better. So that's really impressive, and again, like these things are super rare.
So does that help us understand about the adaptations of the eyes through time then, or how the eyeball has changed?
They sometimes can. I can tell you about another study that we have done. We just published that some months ago, where we looked at some fish, very primitive fish from the Cambrian, so more than 520 million years ago. And they have the eyes preserved, and we can see the sort of shape of the eye, and even the lens, so like the little the sort of lens that is inside that we use to focus the image with was preserved. But the more surprising fact was that there was another pair of eyes in between the big eyes. So they had 4 eyes.
Okay.
And you may have heard about the third eye, this sort
Yes.
of idea that we might have this third eye, which actually there's truth to that, because we have this pineal organ, which in us is used to regulate our sleep cycles, so it secretes melatonin so that we can sleep. But in other animals, like for example lizards, they have their scales on the head, and one of these scales is transparent, and light can come through and then hit this pineal organ, and they can sense light with that. And if you go down to even more primitive animals like lampreys that lack jaws, it's almost look like a perfect eye, not a perfect eye, but almost an eye. So people have always been thinking like it was more of had an eye-like function. So with discoveries like these, where we can find the melanin and so forth preserved in really ancient fossils, we've been able to show that our ancestors had 4 eyes. In terms of what discoveries we might be able to make with these, I can't really say yet. But it definitely could show us something about the sort of arrangement of the melanosomes and so forth. But it's quite conserved. But it might just tell us something about the preservation and why these things are exceptional. And maybe like if you find fish that preserve color patterns and things like that, that could tell you something about the ecology of these fish. If they are living up in the open water column, they tend to not have color patterns, they just have counter shading. If you start to find spots or stripes, they probably live closer to the seafloor. So those things might be able to be revealed as you find more fossils, and perhaps color patterns are revealed.
This is really exciting stuff, because this is telling us an awful lot about, as you said, the ecology, the food web, everything that's going on within the ecosystem of this marine column, really. And it's just fantastic, because these are fish that could possibly have been right at the surface, died and floated all the way down, isn't it? So we could have fish from any particular area within that water column.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the thing, like they didn't live where they got buried. So they could have come from somewhere else, and you could start to work that out if you have the color patterns preserved.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Jakob. And I understand you're now going to go down to the site.
Looking forward to see it.
And yes, hopefully give you a hammer and chisel as well.
I love that.
Thank you very much for coming along and telling us a little bit more about it. So we've got all these amazing professionals coming throughout the 2 weeks that we're here. And we've been absolutely delighted to learn all of that with you. Thank you.